consider that this shall be their ruin, and let us go up, and we shall overcome them. But if there be no iniquity in their nation, let my world.
Hallelujah. That's a perfect precept right there. Right? It just goes to show you, it goes to show you why they wanted us to forget the law. When we forget the law, we don't keep the commandments, our enemy has power over us. Right? We're under the other nation's power at that point. When we keep the commandments and we have our Heavenly Father as that brick, right? We know that these people can't touch us. Right? We are under the control of the Heavenly Father. Right? Good precept, right?
Verse 51. In the self-same manner wrote he to his whole kingdom and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city.
Salaki, did you read verse 50?
Oh, okay, sorry. I read verse 49. Verse 50. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die.
That's very important because he was making this a law. If he found you circumcising your children, keeping the law, statutes, and commandments, he said you're going to die. That's a crazy position to be in, right? It's like, do you serve the king at this point, or do you serve the Heavenly Father? Right? You're gonna die either way. Right? You break the commandments, you're gonna die. But if then you don't keep the commandments of the king, you're gonna die. Exactly.
How many of us are ready?
Exactly. How many of us are ready to be put in that type of position? For their heritage in the nation of Israel. Right? All these things are very important.
In the self-same manner wrote he to his whole kingdom and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. Then many of the people were gathered unto them to will, every one that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land,
right,
and drove the Israelites into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for succor,
for safety, for relief. Right, read on.
Now the 15th day of the month, Caslu, in the 140th and 5th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar and builded idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side.
This is straight wickedness going on right here. All right? Straight wickedness. They're building idols around these altars and things like that. All right? We know we are not supposed to be building idols.
Right.
These things are not supposed to be around the children of Israel, and they start building these things up. Right? Remember, some of these Israelites were for these things that they commanded them to do. They said, let's do it. You want to build an idol, an altar with idols? Let's do it. That's how wicked the children of Israel were being. All right, read on.
And every burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. Mm-hmm. And when they had ripped in pieces the books of the law, which they found, they burnt them with fire.
So they were getting rid of the holy book. Right? Remember, when we talk about feast of dedication, I want you to understand what point they were trying to bring us down to. Right? They tried to destroy everything we had. Our entire heritage, everything that was given from the Most High to our forefathers, they tried to destroy that, completely destroy it. Right? So read on.
And wheresoever it was found with them, with any of the book of the Testament, or if any consented to the law, the king's commandment was that they should be put to death. Thus did they, by their authority, unto the Israelites every month, to as many as were found in the cities. Now the 25th day of the month, they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of God. At which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised.
Right, so you had righteous women at this point. They were circumcising their children when they were told not to. Right? So you have women sleeping around saying, no, my child is going to keep this law. They understood how important this was. And they put their life on the line to do these things, to keep the law, statutes, and commandments. Right? So these are the things that we have to get back to. How far are you willing to go for the law, statutes, and commandments? Right? Read on.
Verse 61.
They take that child and they hang the baby from the snake. The baby can't even talk yet. All right? These are the ways that the other nations were doing to us. All right? These things are very important for us to understand. How far they were willing to go to destroy us. All right, read on.
And rifled their houses, and slew them that had circumcised them. How that many in Israel were fully resolved and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean thing. Wherefore they chose rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died. And there was very great wrath upon Israel.
You gotta ask yourself, right? You gotta ask yourself, are you this type of Israelite?
Right.
Right? How far, or hey, I'm gonna offer you. What you gonna choose? You gotta think about these things, right? It was people before they defiled meat, before they ate pork or any of these unclean foods that the Most High told us not to eat. Right? They said they would rather die before they do something like that. Are we really in that mind state as Israelites right now?
You make a good point, Captain. Because a lot of times when we read these verses where it says, "Look on the days of your fathers," for a lot of brothers and sisters, we look toward what the time of King Solomon, where everything was living fat and delicious and jewelried up, looking good, and everything was nice.
Right.
King David was sitting on the throne. Everything was fine. We don't really look toward the days where things were troubled, where we were going through problems with situations. Where our people was dying out in the streets, like our people are dying today. We don't look back these days. But unlike today, back then, our people was doing what? They were choosing rather to die and give up their life to do what? To keep the commandments and serve their Heavenly Father. Right. They didn't fold. They didn't fold like no cheap Christian Sunday church suit.
Right.
They didn't fold. They kept the commandments.
Very true. Hallelujah. Good point. All right, so let's get into chapter 2. All right, let's see one of our great forefathers. And I want to listen, before we go on to that, I want everybody to understand, these are not fairy tales that you're reading. Right? A lot of times, sometimes we think that the stories that we're reading, it's just written, I guess there's a point to the story. No, these are things actual accounts that happened with our forefathers. You have to really put this in perspective. All right? So I just wanted to say that. Make sure you understand that this is not the story we're reading right now is not a fairy tale. This really happened. When they talk about hanging infants from their neck. All right? So read them. You got something?
Oh, yeah. I should do this up.
Okay, fine. I'll do that.
So,
chapter 2, come on.
The book of First Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 1. In those days arose Matthias, son of John, the son of Simeon, a priest of the sons of Jored from Jerusalem, dwelt in Modin. And he had 5 sons, Joan called Cadiz, and Simon called Thassis, and Judas, who was called Maccabeus, Eleazar called Avaran, and John.
Does anybody know? Anybody know what the word Maccabee means?
I got some of the access right there. She knows.
Kind. What does that mean, sister? Can you tell us? Right? The word Maccabee means hammer.
Right.
So remember, all of these names have a meaning when you start going into the Hebrew and people that were named in Greek or whatever have you. Everybody's name, when you have a name, it was a meaning behind the name. All right? Now we have names like Tyrone and Ray them. Right? We don't have a meaning to our name. But as we come back into this truth, that's why we rename ourselves, because we have a purpose, we have a meaning. Right?
A priest, verse 6, and when he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judah and Jerusalem, he said,
woe is me. He said, destruction. I'm destroyed by seeing this. Read on.
Woe is me. Wherefore was I born to see this misery of my people and the holy city, and to dwell there, when it was delivered into the hand of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers? Her temple is become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets. Her young men with the sword of the enemy. One nation have not had a part in her kingdom, and gotten of her spoils.
Right. So what nation tried to save the children of Israel? What nation didn't try to take away? All right. We got to think about that when we talk about getting along and singing kumbaya and holding hands. Right. All of the nations have played some part of destroying Israelites. Absolutely. All right. You know. Verse 11.
All her ornaments are taken away. Of a free woman, she has become a bondslave. And behold, our sanctuary, even our beauty and our glory, is laid waste.
Right.
And the Gentiles have profaned it. To what end, therefore, shall we live any longer?
Right. What's the purpose of living if this is going to happen to us? Right. What's the purpose of us living if all of these things, these bad things are happening? We might as well just die. This is
what these officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city of Modin to make them sacrifice. And when many of Israel came unto them, Matthias also and his sons came together. Then answered the king's officer man in this city, strengthened with sons and brethren. Now therefore come thou first and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done.
Right.
Yea, and the men of Judah also, and such as remain at Jerusalem, so shalt thou and thy house be in the number of the king's friends. And thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards.
Right, so they're trying to make a covenant with him at this point, him and his son. He said, if you do as the heathen have done, man, you're going to sit next to the king. You're going to be a great man. We're going to give you rewards. We're going to give you all the gold and silver that you want, all the gold and silver for your generation, your son. He's trying to make that covenant with them at this point, right? Read on.
I was going to say, the only thing I was going to say is that they have the wealth. We read it. You know, they took the wealth from us.
Yes.
They took the gold, the vessels, the money. They have the money to back up their words. You know, so there's no reason for Matthias not to believe to believe that they're lying to him. You understand?
Right.
So to understand the situation that Matthias is in. Then Matthias answered and spake with a loud voice, though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers.
He said, I don't care about what everybody else is doing. Me and my household, we're going to serve the Lord. Right? You know.
The Most High forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion either on the right hand or the left.
Right? You know.
Now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar which was at Modin.
Right.
According to the king's commandment. Which thing, when Matthias saw, he was inflamed with zeal.
He got upset very quickly when he saw him doing this, right? Read on.
Which thing, when Matthias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled. Neither could he forbear to show.
He ran up there on that altar and slew him right then and there. That's how upset he was because he was defiling that altar like that. Right? That's how upset, that's how serious he took the law, statutes, and commandments. He knew you weren't supposed to be defiling the altar like that. Right? They were just doing it willingly at this point. All right, read on.
And slew him upon the altar. Also the king's commissioner, who compelled men to altar, thus dwelt zealously for the law of Yahweh, like as Phinehas did unto Zambri, the son of Shalom. And Solomon. And Matthias cried throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, whosoever is zealous of the law and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me. So he and his sons fled with the mountains and left all that ever they had in the city. Then many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness to dwell there. Both they and their children and their wives and their cattle, because of affliction, increased sore upon them.
Right.
Now when it was told the king's servants and the host that was at Jerusalem and the city of David, that certain men who had broken the king's commandment were gone down into the secret places of the wilderness, they pursued after them a great number, and having overtaken them, they camped against them and made war against them on the Sabbath day. And they said unto them, let that which ye have done hereto suffice. Come forth and do according to the commandment of the king, and ye shall live. But they said, we will not come forth, neither will we do the king's commandment to profane the Sabbath day. So then they gave them the battle with all speed. Howbeit they answered them not, neither cast they a stone at them.
Right, so like, where you at?
Verse 36.
36. Let's jump to verse 45. Just for process of time.
The book of First Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 45. Then Matthias and his friends went around about and pulled down the altars, and the children soever they found within the coasts of Israel uncircumcised, those they circumcised violently.
So I'm gonna just give you guys a brief what just happened. So they were trying to fight them on the Sabbath day, but they were saying we can't fight on the Sabbath, right? And then one of the brothers, they were saying that we're gonna die. They're gonna cast us off the earth if we don't start fighting them back, even if it's a Sabbath. They're gonna get rid of all of us. So they started to fight back, and when they started to win, this is what Matthias and his sons and the people that were following were doing. So read on.
And the children soever they found within the coasts of Israel uncircumcised, those they circumcised violently. And they pursued also after the found men, and the work prospered in their hand. So they recovered the law out of the hand of the Gentiles and out of the hand of the kings. Neither suffered they the sinner to triumph. Now when the king drew near, Matthias should die. Now when the time drew near that Matthias should die, he said unto his sons, now have pride and rebuke gotten strength, and the time of destruction and wrath, and the wrath of indignation.
Right.
Now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the law.
Right. So what does that mean? Right. What is it? Eager, right? To have that strong desire. Have that strong desire for the law. Right? A burning desire. Right? Read on.
And give your lives for the covenant of your fathers.
The lives. Right? That's what he's telling his son before he died. Right? Read on.
Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did in their time. So shall you receive great honor and an everlasting name.
Right. So let's jump. We're going to jump to chapter 3 right now. All right. So that's a powerful story of what Matthias and his sons did. Remember, when he started to see these things, he said, "Woe is me!" Right? He was vexed. He was vexed when he started seeing the destruction and the state of his people. That's how much he was. He loved the law. He loved the heritage of his forefathers. He loved his people. Because remember, on the Sabbath day, they were killing people. And Matthias and his sons, they started crying for these things. They said, "Man, they starting to kill us. Why are they doing us like this?" Right? So Matthias, he was a strong man, and he's the one that started to fight back. He gave them that desire to fight back with him. All right, so let's jump to chapter 3. Let's see what his son did.
The book of First Maccabees, chapter 3, verse 1. Then his son Judas, called Maccabeus, rose up in his stead, and all his brethren helped him, and so did all they that held with his father. And they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. So he gat his people with great honor, and put on a breastplate as a giant, and girded his warlike of harness about him. And he made battles, protecting the host with his sword. And
all of these people that were vexing the children of Israel, he was burning these people up. He was killing them. Right? Anybody that vexed the nation of Israel, get rid of them. He said, "This is what you've done to my people. You got to pay." we know what type of man this is. He's taken after his father. Right? Remember, his name means the hammer. Right? The hammer. He was coming down with the sword. Right? Read on.
Because salvation prospered in his hand. He grieved also many kings, and made Jehu glad with his works, and his memorial is blessed forever. Moreover, he went through the cities of Judah, destroying the ungodly out of them, and turning away wrath from Israel, so that he was renowned unto the outmost part of the earth. And he received unto him such as were ready to perish. Then Apollonius gathered the Gentiles together and a great host out of Samaria to fight against Israel. Which thing, when Judas perceived, he went forth to meet him. And so he smote him and slew him. Many also fell down slain, but the rest fled. Wherefore Judas took their spoils, and Apollonius' sword also. Therewith he fought all his life long.
Right? So he took his sword and started fighting. Right? He took the instrument that he was using to kill people, and he used it for himself. Right? So it just goes to show you how great this man was, how powerful he was. He was very skilled in war. Right? He knew what he was doing. Strategic, right? Read on.
Verse 13. Now when Siron, a prince of the army of Syria, heard say that Judas had gathered unto him a multitude and a company of faithful to go out with him to war, he said, I will get me a name and honor in the kingdom, for I will go fight with Judas and them that are with him, who despise the king's commandment. So he made him ready to go up, and there went with him a mighty host of the ungodly to help him, and to be avenged of the children of Israel. And when he came near to going up of Beth Horon, Judas went forth to meet him with a small company, who, when they saw the host coming to meet them, said unto Judas, how shall we be able, being so few, to fight against so great a multitude and so strong, seeing we are ready to faint with fasting all this day?
Right, so really quick, did anybody see the movie 300? This is where they got the story from, right? Remember, they was going to war with a lot of people, right? They were fighting a lot of people. They didn't have a lot of brothers with them, right? They were fighting great hosts, people that ran countries, people that were great men in other nations, great armies of people, and they were slewing them because of the power of the Most High. Right? So when you look at the story of 300, that story is mimicked after Judas Maccabeus. Right? Matthias, his sons. This is where they got that story from. Right? And they just try to put their little spin on it. But you know, they take in everything from Israelites anyway. What you got?
I was going to say, I think in Joshua also, Most High cut down.
Right? When we used to go to war, sometimes we didn't have a bunch of people. The Most High doesn't deal with numbers like that, right? He might choose a few, and then he's gonna do his work with just that few. All right. You talk about these wars and things that we're having. It wasn't a lot of men, right? We were going against great countries, just because of the spirit of the Most High was with us. And we got to realize how strong that spirit is. You got the spirit of the Most High, you could do a lot of stuff. Right? What you got?
Gideon? Yeah. Oh yeah, Gideon is 300.
All right. We'll do that for now. Right? So let's jump back.
Verse 16. And when he came near to the going up of Beth Horon, Judas went forth to meet him with a small company, who, when they saw the host coming to meet them, said unto Judas, how shall we be able, being so few, to fight against so great a multitude and so strong, seeing we are ready to faint with fasting all this day? Unto whom Judas answered, it is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few.
Right, you see that? He understood the law. Right? He understood the wisdom of the Most High. It said it's not a hard matter for many to be shut up by a few. Right? Read on.
And with the Yahweh of heaven it is all one. To deliver with a great multitude or a small company. For the victory of of battle standeth not in the multitude of an host, but strength cometh from heaven.
From heaven. The Most High that is in heaven, right? Read on.
They come against us in much pride and iniquity to destroy us, and our wives and children, and to spoil us. But
that's us as soldiers, that's what we do. Right. We fight for our lives and all. Right, read on.
But we fight for our lives and our laws. Wherefore Yahweh himself will overthrow them before our face. And as for you, be ye not afraid of them. Right. Now as soon as he had left off speaking, he leapt suddenly upon them, and so Sihon and his hosts to the plain, where were slain about 800 men of them, and the residue fled into the land of the Philistines. Then began the fear of Judas and his brethren, and an exceeding great dread to fall upon the nations around about them, and so much as his fame came unto the king, and all nations talked of the battles of Judas.
Right, so Judas is starting to make a name for himself at this point. Right, he's putting men to flee. Right, they're fleeing. They're running away from his camp. They're running away from the army of the Most High. Right. Hold that. Give me the book of Joel, chapter 2.
The book of Joel, chapter 2, verse 11.
Right.
Joel 2 and 11. And Yahweh shall utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great.
The Most High's camp, the Most High's army has always been very great, right? Read on.
For he is strong that executeth his word.
Because Judas had an understanding of this right here. He knows he's strong because what? He's executing his word. Very simple. As long as you stay in the law, statutes, and commandments, you will be fine. You will be good. The Most High will not forsake you. All right? We got to learn to put our trust back in the Most High. All right? Now we kind of waver. It's like, will the Most High really look out? Are you keeping the commandments? As long as you're keeping the commandments, you will be fine. That's what the book says. That's what the Most High told us. And the Most High is not a liar. All right? Is more on that? Okay, fine. So jump in. So go back to Matthew.
First Maccabees chapter 3, verse 27. Now when King Antiochus heard these things, he was full of indignation, wherefore he sent and gathered together all the forces of his realm, even a very strong army. He opened also his treasure and gave his soldiers pay for a year, commanding them to be ready whensoever he should need them.
All right, so he gave them a pay for a year, right? So he's setting up a strategy right now. He's like, man, we gotta get rid of these dudes, right? So read on.
Nevertheless, when he saw that the money of his treasures fell, and that the tributes in the countries were small because of the dissensions and plague which he had brought upon the land and taken away the laws which he had been of old time, he feared that he should not be able to bear the charges any longer, nor to have such gifts to give so liberally. So, as he did before, for he had abounded above the kings that were before him. Wherefore, being greatly perplexed in his mind, he determined to go into Persia, there to take the tributes of the countries, and to charge of all things that he would have done, as also concerning Judah and Jerusalem, to will that he should send an army against them to destroy and root out the strength of Israel and the remnant of Jerusalem, and to take away the memorial from that place, and that he should place strangers in orders, and divide their land by lot. So the king took half of the forces that remained and departed from Antioch. Antioch, his royal city, the 147th year, and having passed the river Euphrates, he went through the high country of Isis, whose Ptolemy the son of Dormenes, and Nicanor, and Georgias, mighty men of the king's friends.
Right, so he's setting all these people up, right, to what? To try to destroy the children of Israel. Right? So let's jump to chapter 4. Right? We're almost there.
Verse 3. While as forces were dispersed from the camp, fellows flee from us. But as soon as it was Judas showed himself in the plain with 3,000 men, who nevertheless had neither armor nor swords to their minds. And they saw the camp of the heathen, that it was strong and well harnessed, and compassed round about with horsemen. And these were expert of war.
They were experts of war. So they came prepared, right? They have a duty to fulfill. They came prepared. These were experts of war, right? Read on.
Verse 8. Then said Judas to the men that were with him, fear ye not, there be afraid of their assault. Remember how our fathers delivered in the Red Sea, when Pharaoh pursued them with an army. Now therefore